Today's video is going to show you how to make a beginner-friendly elastic waist maxi skirt. Here are the materials that you will need. Pre-shrink your fabric by washing and drying it according to its washing instructions. I'm going to demonstrate how to fold the fabric with this piece of paper, and as you can see, I'm starting out with my print facing up. Fold your fabric to where the short sides meet. Now your fabric should have the wrong side facing up, and it's going to stay this way until the end of the project. After you fold the fabric, you're going to take it to the sewing machine and use a straight stitch to sew the open end closed. Now the skirt is starting to form, so this is what you should have. So all of the information that I just gave you, you are about to see. So here's my fabric folded with the wrong side facing up, and I'm going to go ahead and use some clips to hold it in place before I take it to my sewing machine. If you don't have any clips, then feel free to use straight pins to hold it in place. I'm going to sew the open end closed with a straight stitch. Always be sure to use a back stitch at the beginning and end of your stitch to lock it in. Also remember to remove your pins or clips as you sew. I'm going to cut off any loose threads, and I actually recommend that you do this before you take it to the sewing machine. Go ahead and measure out how much elastic that you need by wrapping it around your waist, making sure that it fits snug. You don't want it to fit loose at all. Where the elastic meets is how much you need, but go ahead and add about 1 inch to that because we're going to need that allowance when we get ready to sew the elastic together. Now we're going to make a casing for the elastic, and I'm going to set my seam gauge at 1/2 inch. Just for reference, I have the folded side of the fabric to my left and I have the stitched side of the fabric to my right. I'm going to start off at the top by folding one side of the fabric towards me, making sure that it's 1/2 inch wide, and then I'm going to press it in place. I'm just going to go ahead and double check it and continue this process, making sure that the top of my skirt has a 1/2 inch fold all the way around. I just want to make a note that I did start in the middle, but you don't have to. You can start from the left, you can start from the right. Just start wherever it is comfortable for you. This is just a quick tip when trying to catch those corners. I like to pick up my skirt from the middle and then place it back down on the ironing board, so that way the corners are now in the middle. Okay, so now we're at the seam of the skirt where we first stitched, so I'm just going to press that open just enough so that that fold will lay flat on top of that seam. So now I'm going to put the skirt over the ironing board so that I can continue to press open that seam. I'm using the tip of the iron to help guide that seam open. So now I'm going to take the skirt and place it back on the ironing board the way we had it. And then I'm going to take my elastic and place it directly underneath that fold. You want to fold over the fabric and the elastic together. And this is how we're going to find out how many inches to set our seam gauge. Set the top of the seam gauge on top of the fold and then set that notch right below the bottom of that fold. So mine is going to be set at about 2 1/4 inches. Remove the elastic and then use the seam gauge to continue to fold and press the top of the skirt. When you flip it over to the other side, just make sure that everything is laying flat so that you don't accidentally add any more creases. I'm going to take it to my sewing machine and I'm going to use a straight stitch to sew the bottom of this fold, which is now the casing for the elastic. Before I begin sewing, I'm going to take 2 clips and set them about 5 inches apart to remind me not to sew in this area because we need to leave it open for the elastic to go through. Again, if you don't have any clips, then you can use your straight pins. I'm going to begin sewing behind the clip that is closest to me, and I'm also going to use the outside of the presser foot as a guide. Always remember to backstitch or lock in your stitch at the beginning and end. Stop sewing once you reach the second clip and go ahead and remove them. Alright, so here's the elastic and the safety pin, and all you're going to do is just poke the safety pin through one end of the elastic. And we're going to use that safety pin to guide the elastic through the casing. So basically you want to push some of the fabric over the safety pin and pull it over the elastic, and you're just going to keep doing this throughout the entire skirt, but make sure that the other end of the elastic does not go inside of the skirt just yet. Now that we've reached the other side, we're going to check that the elastic is not twisted or folded inside of the skirt. So just kind of feel around to make sure that it's straight, and you can go ahead and remove the safety pin. Go ahead and overlap the elastic about an inch or so. We're going to use a zigzag stitch to sew it closed, and you want to go back and forth a couple times. Go ahead and give your skirt a good stretch. We're going to use a straight stitch to sew that opening closed, and you want to make sure that you pull the skirt taut to make sure that you have a nice, neat stitch. Please be sure not to sew on top of the elastic. Now we're getting ready to hem our skirt, but we need to cut it if necessary. I'm going to fold my skirt in half, and then I'm going to fold it in half again. I just find this to be an easy way to cut it. You can refer to this chart for reference. I'm making a skirt for someone who is 5'5", so I'm going to cut my skirt at 40 inches, which it already is 40 inches, so I don't necessarily have to cut it. If you are taller than 5'5", then go ahead and add the necessary inches. If you are shorter than 5'3", then go ahead and subtract the necessary inches. If you want to add fringes to your skirt, then subtract the length of the fringes from the length of the skirt that needs to be cut. So say for instance, I want to add some fringes that are 2 inches. I'm going to subtract the 2 inches from the 40 inches, which will leave me with 38 inches. So that is the length that I would need to cut instead of 40 inches. Alright, so just for clarification, if I cut my skirt at 38 inches and subtract the 1 inch seam allowance, that is going to put us at 37 inches. Then we're going to add the fringes that are 2 inches. That is going to now put us at 39 inches, which is the total length needed for a maxi skirt for someone who is 5'5". Whatever the length is of the fringes that you want to add, just use that formula. Alright, so now that we got all of that out of the way, and I hope it made sense, I'm going to now take my skirt to the ironing board so that we can hem the bottom. Now I'm going to take my seam gauge and set it at 1/2 inch. And just like we did earlier in the video, I'm going to use that seam gauge as a guide to make sure that I create a 1/2 inch fold all around the bottom of my skirt. Just a quick tip, using an iron throughout your sewing project will help it to look more polished versus homemade. To finish off this hem, I'm basically going to fold it inside of itself. You'll get a better view of what I'm doing in just a little bit. You can go ahead and use your clips or pins to hold it in place, but I find that when I press it, it holds it in place for me just as well. Alright, so now it's time to take it to the sewing machine, and we're going to use a straight stitch all the way around. So that's basically it. The skirt is now finished. Go ahead and turn it inside out. Wear it with pride because you created it with your own hands. I know that this video is pretty lengthy, but it is very detailed, and I wanted it to be beginner friendly for someone who is new to sewing, and I pray that this video helps.